All right, guys, thank you so much, first of all, for downloading the SEO link building guide. I am 100% convinced that you guys are going to absolutely love it. It's going to be amazing. It's stuff that I have implemented for myself. I've used these techniques to build links from sites like Forbes, sites like Inc., Entrepreneur Magazine, Bloomberg, Washington Post, Reuters. You name it, it's possible if you use these links. If you use these tips to build links from any website around the world. Now, I'm going to actually talk to you guys a little bit about pitching. So what does it mean to actually pitch, how to pitch, who to pitch to, and what are some do's and some don'ts of pitching to editors and to freelance writers. So, what does it mean to pitch something? Well, basically what you're talking about when you pitch is that you're basically trying to tell and convince your audience or your freelance writer or your editor that you have a story that's worth getting mentioned in some of these major publications like Forbes, Inc., Entrepreneur, whichever blog you reach out to. And so let's talk about some things that are, let's first start with the don'ts actually. Let's talk about some things that you shouldn't do, okay? So, rule number 1, don't pitch without reading the publication. That sounds kind of silly and sounds kind of obvious, but you would be surprised how many people pitch a publication and they have never even read that publication, not a single article. I get pitches all the time. People come up to me and say, "Hey, Rafi, I'm creating this amazing, I'm just like the best gamer there is out there. I play this, Call of Duty 2, and I play this Need for Speed, all this kind of stuff. And I have this amazing idea for this game, what I should be doing. Do you mind getting this story into Forbes?" And I'm like, why should Forbes be interested in your gaming idea? Did you even read an article on Forbes to see if they're about gaming? So you can't be completely off topic. The first thing you should do before anything else is what? Read the publication that you're actually going to be pitching to. If you're not reading it, there's no point. You won't know what to pitch. You won't know what the publication is about. You won't know who to pitch to. What you really want to do is pitch to the section where you want to write. Okay? So, most magazines have multiple sections and multiple places, within the publication. Like, not everything on the site is about one topic. There are many, many sections to majority of publications. Like, you can look at Huffington Post. It's a very generic publication. If you think about it, they have articles ranging from marketing to arts to crafts, politics, just kind of everything in between. So if you just send a generic type of, a pitch to Huffington Post saying, "Hey, I want to write for you guys," they're going to be like, "Well, what do you want to write about? Which section do you want to write for, in? Like, what's your topic of expertise?" So you want to make sure that you're actually figuring out, okay, I'm going to go to Inc. magazine. I want to write for Inc. You got to know exactly which section. Do you want to talk about business? Do you want to talk about finances? Do you want to talk about startups? Do you want to talk about like small businesses? Do you want to talk about B2B? Like, you got to really know exactly which section you want to actually pitch to. That's the first step. So read that section, get familiar with that section, look at all the people that are actually in that section and that are contributing to that section, and pitch accordingly. All right, next. Can you actually make sure that my ringtone is turned off also? Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, point number 2 that I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about is to have a very, very clear top line for your story. So let's write this somewhere over here. Should have really gotten a bigger board for this. Here, let's organize this a little bit here. So, next point is have a clear top line story. Okay, so what does that mean? What do I mean by having a clear top line story? Well, have a unique angle to your story. Don't just say, hey, we're a company, we're a SaaS startup, and we do this, and this, and we do this, and then we achieve. That's too much information. Like, nobody needs to know your entire life story. What people are actually interested in, most editors, most freelance columnists, they're interested in a unique, specific angle to your story. For example, I recently read an article, which came out a while back, but I like to use this article because it's a really good example, about Neil Patel, who is basically this well-known marketer. And so he has an article about him on CNN, and the article is actually titled, ".com Millionaire Who Lives in a Hotel." And the entire article is focused around him living actually in a hotel, and talks about his business, and talks about what he does for work, why he chooses to live in a hotel, why that's convenient for him, and goes in depth to talking about all of that kind of information. Now notice, that is a very, very clear and catchy line, right? .com millionaire, there's some big words there, like .com millionaire, right? Who lives in a hotel. That's a unique angle to a story. Notice, they could have written the story like, meet the guy that makes, that made $1 million, whatever. And they could have mentioned all of that, but instead of taking a generic approach to it, okay, what they chose to do with that article is have a very unique angle to the story, where basically it's not just talking about anything and everything, but it's kind of encompassing all the entire story in just a very, and focusing on just a very specific thing within that story. Okay, so that's the main next thing that you want to talk about, is that you want to make sure that your story has a very, very precise and very definite main focus and main thing that's like noteworthy that you're trying to highlight, and that should ideally be the kind of like the title of your pitch. All right, so let's move on to the third point, and I'm sorry that I'm just kind of writing all over this board right now. I'm going to erase this one again. I guess you don't need to know the don'ts if you know the do's really well, right? Another really important thing that you want to make sure is that, actually this should really be a don't. Do nothing if you don't hear back. That is one of the most common mistakes that I've noticed, is that when they pitch somewhere, they don't hear anything back, they just don't do anything. Okay? And that's going to be really, really important. Like, you cannot take that kind of approach where you just literally don't do anything. When you pitch and you don't hear anything back, what do you have to do? You're going to have to follow up. You have to follow up with your editor, with your freelance writer. Following up is one of the most neglected things that I notice in pitching, is that they just don't do anything. Like, it's really easy for people's emails to just go, especially with editors. I talked about how busy these people are. So if you're reaching out to these people and they're not following, you're not following back, well, chances are they're probably interested in your story, but it just fell to the bottom of their inbox. And if you don't follow up with these people, you're not going to hear from them. Okay, so what you have to do is you have to follow up with them. And also, that brings me to another point, is that if one of these editors don't respond back to you, well, guess what? Reach out to a different one. If a columnist for Inc. or Entrepreneur or Bloomberg doesn't reach out to you and doesn't respond to it, you don't have to stop there. That's not the only person that writes for that publication and has editorial access. There are usually multiple editors and multiple columnists for each publication. So you want to make sure that you just don't reach out to one person. Reach out to tons of people. Pitch different stories, okay? So that's another do, I guess, which I should put up here, which I have no room, so I'm going to go ahead and erase this one. have multiple angles to your pitch. Okay, have multiple angles to your pitch. Let's take this one out. So what does it mean to have multiple angles to your pitch? Just like we talked about the Neil Patel example, right? .com millionaire who lives in a hotel. That is one angle that was taken at that story, to talk about Neil Patel and this character and what he does, him as a business person. But it didn't need to be presented that way, right? That story could have just as well been told about title like guy who made $1 million while living in a hotel. There's another angle. Or you can take something completely different. You can find something completely different about him that still encompasses the entire story, but have a totally different angle. Maybe focusing on how this 17-year-old kid started a SaaS company and later went on to make millions. That has nothing to do with the hotel at all, right? Now, you can still bring in the hotel example in that article, if that's one of your main focuses. But again, if you see that you pitched this one type of angle to your story to multiple publications, to multiple people, in different ways, and you're not getting any sort of response back, well, guess what? Your angle to the story might not be interesting. So try to think of the most creative thing about your entire story and highlight that as like the title of your actual pitch. Okay, try to think of different ways that you can tell the same story, basically, is the main point that I'm trying to drive home here. Okay, I'm going to share with you guys one more. An important tip for pitching. Build relationships. I can't spell. Whatever. Build relationships with editors and journalists on social media, on the phone, on Skype, in person. You're going to have to build relationships with people no matter what you do in business, and that goes for anything really, not just pitching to editors, right? So one of the most important things I learned about pitching is that you have to personalize it. You can't just go up to them and say, hey, I'm interested in writing for a publication, or hey, can you cover your story, and that's it, leave it at that. Before you pitch anything, use Gary Vaynerchuk, if you guys have heard of him, okay? Gary V has a model that's basically goes something like, what is his model exactly? Jab, 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 then hook. Meaning, you're going to provide value, and then you're going to pitch and sell. Okay? Before you provide a value at least 3 times, you shouldn't really pitch anybody anything. You shouldn't try to sell anybody anything. You shouldn't convince anybody to buy anything, because they don't know who you are. They don't know what you're about. They don't know anything about you. So what's really important is that with these editors and with these freelance journalists, that you reach out to them as a friend, because underneath them as a freelance writer or whatever, you know what they are, is a person, right? And if you can connect with them as a person by letting them see your face, get them on a video call. Don't just do like digital communications. Say, hey, I would love to get to know you more. Would you be interested in getting to know me? Don't mention anything about the fact that you actually ultimately want something from them. You want them to introduce you to an editor. You want them to write about you. None of that. Just get them on a call. Talk to them as if you were talking to anybody else out there. You go to like a date party, or like you go to like maybe like a business event. You don't really go with that, specifically like, oh, I'm going to target this guy, I'm going to sell him something, right? You go there, network. You get to know them better. You try to get to know who they are as a person. It's the same thing when you're pitching out to an editor, is that you want to get to know these people on a personal level as a person Build a relationship with them. Do that 3 times in a row. Introduce yourself and just tell them how much you enjoy what they do and their writing and how much it's impacting your life. A week later, do it again. Give them something. Let them, help them out somewhere. Say, hey, I read your article and I saw that you didn't mention this part about it. And I thought that this is something that you could maybe include. Okay, the 3rd time around, maybe you can say, hey, I want to help you out even more. I would love to. I know that you wrote about this topic, but you for some reason left out this particular area, and I happen to be an expert in that. Would you mind if I actually created a draft for you and kind of created part of the article and gave it to you? You don't have to use it, but if you do use it, hey, I'll be so happy. And you don't have to give me credit back for it even. Okay, so just provide value 3 times at least. And then come out. Once you have that personal relationship built with them, once you've gotten them to invest in you, once you've invested in them, then you can make a pitch and say, hey, I love this last article that you wrote, and I noticed that you mentioned these amazing topics. That's awesome. I think it resonates well. But I noticed that you didn't mention that particular area, and instead of bothering you every time and asking you to write and letting me, asking you to change the articles, how about I just write this part section of the article for you? Or how about I write this article for you? I think this would be amazing. If you use it, I would love it. If you don't use it, no worries. I still have a huge follower of yours and still love what you do. Respectfully, Rafi, whatever. You don't have to do it over email. I strongly recommend that you do this over the phone, because it's so much harder to turn down someone over in person or over the phone than it is to just ignore a message or an email. Whenever you make a pitch, try to remember the general sales principles. If the more you can personalize it, the better off you're going to be in general. The more likely you're going to get them to actually respond to you. And in general, it's just a very good idea to personalize connections, digital connections, to the best of our abilities. If you know them in person, by all means, make the pitch in person. You can put me in front of journalists of any publication, and if I'm in front of them in person, I guarantee you I'm going to find some way for them to mention me within that publication, because I know that I can if I have that personal connection with these people, it's just so much you can do, right? You can take everything out of context, completely go out of the business context, become their friend, and just perform a social structure type of social frame, and you can get people to do anything, because people do things for you as a friend. They may not do things for you as a business deal, but they're certainly going to do things for you if you're their friend. So if you can become that person's friend, you are so much more likely to get them to say yes to anything you pitch them, not just writing for their publication, but just anything in general. And I hope that these tips will help you. I want to make sure that I keep these videos not terribly long, because again, I want you guys to give me a phone call and really ask me these questions in person, have a chat with me, let me help you, let me get you into some of these publications. And in return, just like Gary Vee, I don't want anything back except to see you successful writing for major publications and pitching to different places. Thank you guys so much. Catch you in the next video.